What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be chatting with Charles Mockler of Locked On Clippers as the Clippers acquire the former Portland Trailblazers, Robert Covington and Norman Powell, in exchange for Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, Eric Bledsoe, and a future second-round draft pick. Just how much impact will these two acquisitions have on the Clippers here and now? How much are these two pickups about the future of the LA Clippers organization? And how did Robert Covington and Norm Powell look in their Clippers debut? But first, a quick message from our friends over at Bet Online, because Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game right around the corner. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. Joining us now is Charles Mockler of Locked On Clippers. You can follow at Charles Mockler on Twitter. Charles, the Clippers making a deal to bring in Norman Powell, Robert Covington by way of the Portland Trailblazers, sending out Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, and a 2025 second-round pick by way of the Detroit Pistons. And honestly, did Covington and Powell even have time for a cup of coffee before checking into their first game as members of the LA Clippers? Because it feels like the trade just happened and they're already suiting up, and hey, they look pretty good in their debut.
Well, I don't think they had time for a cup of coffee, but I think that's just what the NBA schedule is at this point. Norm Powell checked in and he showed exactly what the Clippers need at this juncture, right? Like, he can score when he really wants to, which is great. Covington's going to be a good wing, kind of not as a main contributor once we have everyone healthy, which is great to see. But I mean, they were as good as you could have possibly wanted them to be. And it's interesting because there's some more kind of chatter that Covington might be moved again before the Thursday trade deadline, but we'll see what happens with that. But right now, I think if you're a Clippers fan, you have to be very excited about next year specifically when everyone's fully healthy.
Yeah, Norm Powell finished with a pretty stellar stat line. He had 28 points, came away with 4 assists on 9 of 16 shooting, 4 of 8. Now, it was in a blowout loss against the Milwaukee Bucks.
Sure.
So, I have to include that part as well. I'm sorry, Charles. But, it is one of those things where you have to be excited if you're the Clippers about what his addition to this, Clippers team looks like when you have a healthy Paul George and Kawhi Leonard further down the line. Now, I find it interesting that you bring up that angle about Robert Covington and the fact that he may be moved again before the NBA trade deadline coming here just right around the corner this upcoming Thursday, because I was going to ask you, can we expect any more movement on the trade front from the LA Clippers, or do you think they're kind of, done headed into the NBA trade deadline?
I think you can. I think there's obviously a pretty kind of clear message that the Clippers want to get a little younger for this window. Like, you look at Norm Powell's contract, it lines up. He's on contract for the next 4 years after the season. So his contract lines up kind of with the same in terms of max years that like Kawhi or PG would sign. I wouldn't be surprised if Serge Ibaka is moved. We have Zubac. You've seen Hartenstein really kind of make this case for a complementary 1-2 center situation. And Serge, there's been some friction with his back surgery and all this other stuff with the team. So I wouldn't be surprised if Serge Ibaka is moved. And also a name that's been kind of moving around the scuttlebutt, for lack of a better term, is Marcus Morris. If you want a position where you can maybe get younger at the wing, Marcus Morris is a guy you could maybe upgrade if you can find, the spot to do it. And Lawrence Frank and the whole kind of Clippers front office is one that is really always trying to find spots to upgrade where they can on the margins.
I look at this, though, back to the Powell Covington trade. One, I think this was an absolute steal for the
Oh
Clippers.
yeah, yeah.
I
No one
mean,
hates this trade except for Portland Trailblazers fans. Like truly, like
I feel like there are, you can't make any excuses from the Blazers angle of this. This was like a pure, like, just they're just trying to get off salary. Like there was no, under the guise of, oh, Anthony Simons looks really good. No, that's I don't think you can
yeah,
come away with that.
not that good.
No, this was an absolute win for the Clippers, but I do find it interesting. If Covington is moved again at the deadline, I thought Covington was a great pickup, honestly, for this Clippers team. And yeah, he's going into this upcoming summer. His contract's going to run out. He'd have to renegotiate and get him back under, lock and key. But at the end of the day, I thought Covington was a solid pickup in the sense of having a bunch of, versatile wings that you have alongside PG and Kawhi further down the line. Do you think it'd be a mistake for the Clippers to try and flip him again at this deadline, or would you like to see them kind of keep him as one of the long-term pieces?
There's a bunch of stuff at play with this, right? Like, so Amir Coffey, for those who haven't watched the Clippers, has kind of emerged as a guy who's on a two-way contract, but who could play like the 2 or the 1, but a bigger 2 or 1 than what's usually possible. And Covington is a wing on a team of pretty much all wings, except for like Reggie Jackson now at this point. So part of it is I think the Clippers are like, we do need a backup point guard in the sense of kind of regular season play and stuff like that. But I kind of hope we keep Covington. He's not going to be the starter. He's not even going to be maybe the second string when everyone is fully healthy. You got Batum, you have Marcus Morris, you have Kawhi and PG. Like, you have 4 wings who are elite at what they do in this specific offensive system. And I trust Ty Lue to find a way to make it work. But if they can't find an upgrade at any other position, I hope we retain, Covington. He's gonna take less than like I think it's like 11 mil or whatever he's at this year. Like, that's not going to be the contract next year for sure. Especially on this team that has a bunch of wings, but it just offers more flexibility and just kind of more, what if possibilities for this front office that has been very creative and very tight-lipped with what their next moves are going to be.
You kind of hinted at it there momentarily, Charles, but obviously these two guys, need time to get acclimated into what the Clippers already have going on this season. And you did kind of mention eyes are kind of set towards, next season at this point, with so many questions regarding Kawhi and PG and the unfortunate likelihood that, it's very distinctly possible that, PG doesn't return this season, that
Right.
This might be one of those seasons that the Clippers are just kind of punting, unfortunately. But that said, if Covington, does stay past the deadline, kind of what are your expectations for how those two guys are involved in this current Clippers rotation, starting versus coming off the bench, et cetera, those kinds of expectations?
I mean, I think if the people watching Locked On NBA watch this scintillating shorthanded Clippers versus full strength reigning championship Bucks matchup, you would see that Norm Powell is the best offensive player maybe on the Clippers right now. So he will probably end up starting at some point. I think if Kawhi and PG don't come back, he should be in the starting lineup probably. He can create his own shot. There's just some extra juice there. And for Covington, it's like, let's just see what he can do, Like, we've had these reclamation projects. We've seen Reggie and Batum kind of be these guys who a lot of people counted out. Covington's last appearance for the Blazers, if you're on NBA Twitter, people were not very excited about, and things like that. So I think Ty Lue is a great head coach for this kind of scenario as well. Like, he's going to tell guys their role, and he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's like, this is what you're going to do. If you do this, things will be great. So I'm expecting, I think one of Kawhi or PG comes back. I don't think we get both of those guys. It's been pretty tight-lipped either way on that scenario. And I think you're playing with house money. Like, we don't have a first-round pick that can be bettered by just not making the playoffs or anything like that. So at this point, you're seeing what the core has. And up until this, we've seen what the core has, which is, a fight to win. We've seen some insane comebacks, obviously. And you add the scoring with Norm Powell, and you add the defense from Covington, which we lost a little bit in that losing Bledsoe and stuff like that. But you just got to be excited for next year. I don't want to say it's a punt because it's difficult, but in the grand scheme of things, like, we could be absolutely very excited for next season.
Maybe I shouldn't have called it a punt, because despite everything going on with Kawhi and PG, this is a Clippers team that has shown a lot of resilience, even after this, loss against the Milwaukee Bucks.
Sure.
They're still 27-28. They're still sitting at 8th in the Western Conference. So it's not like they're in the, basement of the Western Conference. They're still fighting on a nightly basis. They've still got guys out there winning games. Reggie Jackson recently with the game winner against the
Skipping
against
Reggie,
the other team down the
bro.
hall.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a Clippers team that I'm not exactly ready to write off. They could be a very they could walk into the playoffs and be a very annoying first round out, or that team that you're just not looking forward to having to deal with, the one that just won't go away in the play-in tournament. And of course, Charles, you're going to have us posted for all of that and more over at Locked On Clippers. Appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Always ready to talk about good Clippers things here on Locked On NBA.